Playing the trumpet, particularly in the upper register, is tense. Like there's no two ways about it. If I look like I'm not doing very much, there certainly is a lot going on. But if it looks easy, it tends to sound easy.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor. Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults? If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Louis Dowdeswell. Louis, well, he's incredible. Louis' seemingly effortless command of the trumpet's upper register puts him in rare air indeed. As one of the young lions of the bustling London music scene, you can hear Louis lighting it up in studios, stages, and pits, as well as with his own big band. And Louis' video covers of soundtrack tunes have had millions of views worldwide. But the best part is that Louis' laugh comes just as easy as his double C. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. All right, welcome to this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang as we jump across time zones to spend some time this morning, well, morning for me, afternoon for him, with Louis Dowdeswell. So, Louis, hey man, great to meet you finally.
Yeah, hey man, how you doing? It's great to see you. It's been a little while trying to get this all together, but we're here finally. And as I say, thank you so much for waking up so early for me. Trying to squeeze a few things in today, but I'm glad that we managed to make this work. So yeah, awesome, very happy.
Absolutely. I tell you what, man, I've been a fan of your playing for well, actually, let me backtrack. I'm a fan of your playing now. When I first heard you playing on those YouTube clips when you were a wee lad, I just wanted to kick you in the nuts. I mean, that's all, that's all there was to it. Yes. But no, I was super impressed with your playing back then, and then you kind of listening to your progress over the years, and you've kind of taken the world by storm, my friend. So at such a young age, to have garnered some of the acclaim that you have. I mean, it's respect from players. I mean, and I think that's more important than anything else, getting the respect of the cats out there. So I know one of the first people that really talked about you to me was Wayne Bergeron. So Wayne was talking about you coming over and visiting for a bit and stuff like that. And you've had a good relationship with him. So how did you end up getting connected with Wayne?
Oh, well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. It's yeah, it's a funny thing. How did I get in touch with Wayne? So I was at music school, and the first thing, the first time I got in touch with him was when I sent him a message through his website, and I said, "Oh, my neck's puffing out. I believe you have a neck hernia too. You know, I think I must have been probably about 16. I have a neck hernia, and I'm not sure what to do about it. I've been to see some like specialists about this. Do you have any advice, basically?" And I was just like, well, take a punt, see if he gets back. I don't know. And people, maybe some of the younger guys here that are checking this out realize that this is kind of before social media. So we'll probably get onto this a little later, but social media, getting in touch with people back then, as I'm sure a lot of the older guys will know, was never that easy anyway, and you never expected to get a response from anybody, particularly your idols. So it was kind of just I'll send this message. Anyway, so I'm just sat in my maths class, and I have this like old Skype phone, and I start getting this Skype phone call from Maynard B, and I was thinking, that can only be one person. So I was like, get up straight away, fly out of my math class, and run up and down the corridor chatting to Wayne about this stuff. And I was just ecstatic. I didn't know what planet I was on, to be honest with you. I was just so excited. And then I'd seen that he'd replied to my email after that about the next thing. Anyway, a bit of time goes on, and I'm all excited about it. And I start putting out those covers, as you mentioned earlier. I get another message in my YouTube inbox from Wayne Bergeron saying basically, you know, would you like the music to play along with this stuff? Because I've been learning it all by ear at the time, and I was like, oh my, this is crazy. And so we got chatting a bit after that, and then I sort of explained to him that we chatted maybe 3 or 4 months before about this Netconia thing, and it all kind of wrapped up, and we had a few Skype conversations, kind of basically lessons, if you will, but sort of mentoring. And then eventually his wife Barb invited me over, sort of getting into contact with my mum about going over and staying with them and hanging out in LA and doing all that. And then like just 2 days before I went over for the first time in 2012, and I broke my ankle. So I'm like on the plane with this broken ankle going over there, and Wayne's. I was like devastated because I thought the whole trip would be off, and it wasn't. They were very, very lovely, and they looked after me, and I was hobbling around on crutches everywhere and had my leg up with ice and everything, and they just looked after me great, and I saw a load of stuff out in LA. It was just a fantastic experience. I think I must have been, it must have been 18 or something at that point. Maybe 18, 2012. Yeah. So, and it was just awesome. So yeah, I'm very grateful to Wayne and Barb for being so just lovely. I mean, you'd never expect that really. So I'm very, very grateful, very lucky to have got to know them, and our relationship has only flourished since. So yeah.
Well, they're great people. I love both of them to death, and
Yeah.
that it, and what that shows to me is that that spark. When you see something in someone that you go, this person has got so much potential. Um, you know, some people, if you're like, if you have a closed heart, you're gonna do everything you can to hold that person back because you don't want anybody, you don't want to share the limelight with anybody.
Yeah.
But when you see someone who is like, oh man, that person really has some talent that they can contribute to the world. Let me do what I can to help them, to nurture them. I was actually
Yeah.
just listening to a new book by Quincy Jones. It's called 12 Notes. It's phenomenal. So if anybody in the audience who wants to check that out, it's a great book about creativity. But he was talking about his relationship with Count Basie and with Clark Terry, and how Clark was his first trumpet teacher,
Yeah.
and Clark like went out of his way to help Quincy to develop as a musician. And he's like, if it wasn't for Clark, he probably would not have become the person that he is and reached the amount of people that he has in the industry. So
Yeah.
I think, and he's like extolling mentorship and saying, you need to be a mentor. Everybody needs to be a mentor. It doesn't matter who you're mentoring or what field you're in, but you need to if you're in a position where you can help someone, you should always take it upon yourself to do that. So yeah, are
Yeah.
you do you have that kind of nature within yourself, like where when people come up to you and it's like, oh Louis, you're such a great player, or blah blah blah, where you really help to steer people into the best path possible to develop a career?
There's a my honest answer to the question is I want to. I'm also very aware that the internet is a big place, and um, I think I mean, this is getting slightly into another subject, but part and parcel of the reason the trumpet is getting so people get their brains explode when they think about it, and it's so confusing, is that there's a lot of stuff out on the internet that is contradictory and mythy and not very clear, and people are constantly searching. Um, One of the things that my relationship with Wayne that's different to maybe like 99% of my relationships that I've met with people on the internet is that I got to spend a very like a lot of time with him. And I mean, Wayne's I'm sure I could have said, right, can I have some tips, please? Can you, help me get better or whatever, which is what the vast majority of messages I get on the internet. I just feel as though a lot of the time the trumpet is way too complicated and you can mess people up by just giving generic tips to people. I'm much more of the um, feeling that if someone was to come to me, with a very specific problem and we were to invest a reasonable amount of time into trying to fix it, I'm much more of that mindset than sort of um, oh it's just going back to what I was saying before. It's so easy to get in touch with people now
Right.
that I almost feel like it just muddies the waters, and you
Mhm.
can't help everybody. And that's why I'm so grateful for Wayne. Is that it's almost as though he had. I'm not suggesting for a second that he hasn't mentored anybody else, but it felt a lot. It felt a lot like it had come from him,
Mhm.
that he wanted to do that.
Right.
And I'm very much of that mindset. If there's someone that I see doing great and most importantly, wanting to learn, um, then I'm going to try and help them as much as I can. But it's also muddied up with a lot of the same questions that are being asked all the time, which is, oh, generically, how do I get better at high notes? And
Right.
it's like I'm almost I feel a little numbed to that to that to those questions being asked, because there is no one answer to any of this stuff,
Right.
and it's a journey that everyone must go on,
Right.
and I want to do the journey with someone, not just
Yeah.
and it's guidance as well. It's like with some of my students, or any the people that I'm trying to help. It's a long it's a series of light bulbs that turn on over a long period of time. There's no quick way to any of this. I mean, you were saying earlier about how I was young when I was doing it. Yes, maybe, but um, I did invest a lot of time into doing it, and maybe more than some, and very likely a lot less than others, just purely based on age. But it's still a case of discovery. It's like a path in which you go through, and having people like Wayne there to help sort of push you in the right direction is much more of a learning environment that I think is uh, helpful, rather than just sort of like here's a quick answer to any of these things. There just aren't any of those answers. So anyway, long answer,
Yeah.
short. Yes, I am very much of that. I would love to be able to mentor and help people grow, but it has to be almost like a controlled environment where we can look at every single individual thing, because
Right.
there's so much stuff out there. It's terrifying. I have people
Yeah.
come to me saying some things, and I'm just like, where did you read that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a big difference between being a teacher and a mentor,
Mm,
and I think that's the big thing is like, you could certainly, I'm sure that if anybody were to talk to you and say, hey, Louis, I'm having problems getting my high D to slot, that
right.
you could teach them something. But when you have a mentor mentee relationship, I mean, even like you said, you have students that you're teaching, but when you have a mentor mentee relationship, it goes way beyond the skill that you're teaching, and
Yeah, but I agree. I agree. But the biggest thing there with the mental thing is that it's a respect thing,
Mhm.
and I'm 28 years old, so and I'm not 30 yet, so I, I, I'm very hesitant to um suggest that I am like some mentoring. I have a long career ahead where I also need to grow in experience amongst the industry. And yeah, there could be a 14, 15, 16-year-old guy that can help sort of mentor through college and see them into the industry. But I think it's quite different to Wayne must have been around 50 years old when he took, if I can say it for him, took me under his wing. And I feel as though that is uh, definitely more of that sort of mentor kind of age. It's not so much age as much as it is experience, but there is a certain element of respect. And I feel as though I still feel like a kid, and that I couldn't possibly be a mentor. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
in
Well, like
comparison. In comparison.
like you said, for a 14 or 15-year-old kid, or somebody who's in your position when you got hooked up with Wayne, something like that, just
Yeah,
sharing experiences. But I think that's the important thing, we're all on a path, you know.
absolutely.
Like talking to Wayne, that when he was having some problems coming back from his illness, you know, we were talking, and the first thing he said, "Yeah, you know, I'm going to call Bobby later today." So he's going to call Bobby Shue. So you know,
Yeah.
even the guy, that guy has got somebody that he looks to as, you know, guidance for him. So I think we all have. So wherever we are in life, there's always somebody that's behind you on the path, and there's always somebody way the hell ahead of you on the.
And that's the beauty of Wayne. Honestly, like I know a lot of great players, um and everyone, you know, everyone that's still great now as they've always been is always been looking, you know, what's next? How do I continue to improve? But it does absolutely amaze me just how dedicated the guy is to continuing to, you know, be one of the best in the world. And you know, he always says how whenever he's in a different city, he always finds the principal trumpet player in the city, and he takes a classical lesson with them, and he's always finding new little bits of information that he can sort of take apart, and that's the attitude, you know, that's what it is. It's interesting as well, right? Because like speaking of mentorship, there are a lot of guys in this country who are nowhere near as famous as Wayne, um, but they've mentored me, obviously as a player, right? But they mentored me in a lot of other ways, like how to behave in the industry and how to make sure that you are employable, and how to behave when you're at work, and how not to turn up anywhere late, or how to, you know, if you're not an hour early, then you're late. You know, things like this, little bits that that um that unless I was living in LA day to day with Wayne, like it's a different kind of mentorship and actually equally important. And I almost feel like they're the sort of things that if a 15 or 16-year-old kid came to me in this country to chat about, it would be, you know, it would be about like what are the actual skills that are
Right.
required
Mhm.
to make this work as a living, because you know, in actual fact, you know, we're all, you know, our job is we're sort of business, we're sole trader entity business people, and you look at any other industry in the world, you know, tradespeople, really, I'm talking because I still consider myself to be a tradesman. Um, you know, it's all competition, but the weird thing about the music industry is that it's not really, no one treats it like it's competition in a business way. um there's something about having to be very very uh how do I put it, it's like a, oh, I don't know how to really put it, it's you have to, part of your business is to also be like very good mates with people that you're supposedly competing with,
Right.
you know, so people want to go to work with you because you're a good guy and it's fun and it's good and you're a great player, and obviously you've got to be all those things, but these are all also people that in the traditional sense you would be competing with, if you were to be considering yourself a tradesperson. So the mentorship thing is, you're absolutely right, like what you said at the beginning of the chat, was like there are some people that are closed off to this, but what I've realized in my short period in the business is that actually we're all in this together. This is not, in the traditional sense, we're all competition, but we're all getting work from other people, and we're all having to try and make it, all of us are trying to make it work. And it's so easy to spot the guy that isn't on that wavelength, you know,
Yeah.
that is just all out for themselves. It's just so obvious, and everyone is completely aware of it. So from a mental point of view, I almost feel like that is, if you can get people to be thinking like that when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, that even though they might be a really good player and they might be the big fish at the moment, they're about to go into a world where there are a lot of great players. And um, if you act, you know, the right way, then you will have a good career. But
Yeah.
if in in traditional sense, if you were to behave in this industry like a lot of great business people would behave in different industries, you won't make it. It's very strange. It's a
Yeah.
very strange world. But it's also lovely for that reason, because everyone is rooting for each other. All the
Right.
good guys are rooting for each other. and I that's why I love this industry, you know.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
And I've had on the show a couple of your mates. Speaking of which, Tom Walsh and
Mm,
Ryan Quigley have both been on the show,
great.
and and talking with them and about first of all, the trumpet scene there in London is just insane. To me, the current scene there, the level of players and the quality of stuff. I'm not saying that the LA is not good. They're great players in LA, but I'm thinking about in terms of the stuff that you guys are doing as kind of you're kind of cutting edge in a lot of ways, especially like some of the arrangements and stuff that Tom has been doing.
Yeah.
It's taking the stuff that the previous generation has done, and you're kind of adding your own twist to it, your own sound, your own flavor. And I think that this current you and Tom and Ryan and can I remember that is Andy
Andy
Greenwood.
Greenwood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, the stuff that you guys are all doing, to me is like, okay, this reminds me of the 70s, 80s Jerry Hay LA kind of thing, where everything that comes out, it's like, holy crap, that was cool. Like, oh, what are they going to do next? And you start listening for that. And talking to Ryan and to Tom, they're all like, yeah, we're all good mates and we like to go out and, have a pint and, we just
Yeah.
joke around and we have a good time. And, I may play lead on this and Louis will play lead on this. And then, I'll play. And it's like, you guys work together as a team. And without this ego that sometimes exists in the music world of
Yeah.
you're trying to hold things in. But I think any successful group is, or like, not group like a band, but like a group of people who work together. It's
Yeah.
about that camaraderie and that just what do we need to do to get the job done the best way possible, and then
Yes.
that's it.
That is it. I mean, culturally speaking, I think. I mean, it's crazy. I'm about to say this, but it's like there aren't many trumpet players that get away without buying a round at the pub. Like it's true though. Like that is good business practice, and I hate to reduce it to just business. I'm not. I'm just observing that it's kind of interesting that and sometimes when I'm just not up for it, like I'm in the car or something. I want to go home and go to bed because I'm tired or something. Like it's still important that we all that everyone sort of debriefs or pre-briefs. It's an amazing melting pot of crazy good musicians. 90% of which no one will really across the pond necessarily heard of. And funnily enough, I think a lot of it comes down to Tom Walsh actually. I'll just say a bit on him, because we're contemporaries, but he was actually probably my biggest mentor over here. Particularly, he was 3 years above me at the academy, so he was in his last year while I was in my first year, and we met at National Youth Jazz Orchestra. I think I must have been 16 or 17, and he was 2021 or something. And I took over from him as lead trumpet in that band, and he taught me pretty much everything I know really about playing commercial music and really attention to detail. And I feel like that, and he mentored a lot of the younger guys going through, even people that were a bit older than him. Like everyone sort of, not directly really, but just everyone had such respect, or everyone has such respect for him and his ability. His musicianship is absolutely incredible. We this culture sort of started flowing, and then we all started coming together and trying to make things work, and we all wanted to work with. It's also wanting to work with each other. It's not. It's like not. It just doesn't seem. It just seems crazy that there would be people out there that wouldn't want to be part of that. Would rather sort of do it in other. It's just weird to me. That's what I was saying before about it being it's really fun. Like we live fun lives. And very very interesting lives, and it's already to do with that camaraderie. Tom, yeah, like a lot of trumpet players I know, when they think about what is important and where your attention to detail should be, it does come a lot from Tom, because there's absolutely no getting past that guy's ears. It's like um, it's really pretty amazing what he can hear, and his attention to detail with his tuning and his time. There's absolutely no room for error, and it holds you to a really high standard when you work with him. It's fantastic for that. And it's always been the case for me that every time I work with him, I'm always thinking about sort of trying to match same that same standard. Or like self-criticism almost, like really very, very particular. And then obviously, I'm sure in the conversation he had with you, meeting Jerry Hay and actually going to do all of that as well. You're absolutely right. It's sort of Tom's kind of innovated on a lot of it, and I think it's that those skill sets that he has are, and that we all try and sort of have, are very much 2022 necessary, if that makes sense. Like being a trumpet, like a modern commercial trumpet player, requires you to have those skill sets, and they're in abundance in London. And I think a lot of it is to do with everyone's mutual um, uh, uh, want to get to that point, and all with the right priorities in their playing, basically, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
If I had more coffee, it'd make even more sense, I'm sure.
Exactly. But I think there's a lot of things about what we're told we need to be able to do, and then a lot of things that are just simply not discussed. And things like playing in tune, of course it's discussed, right? But
Right.
like to what degree you can get away with not playing in tune, particularly with all these lockdown videos, and whenever we release anything, Tom and I have got the same attitude that literally nothing gets past us. If it's not perfect, it doesn't go out.
Yeah.
And you could say that's not very purist, or you could say this, that, but I'm certainly not. I'm a product over process guy. We've got unlimited time basically to spend on these things when we're releasing them under our own name,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very important that we always show the absolute pinnacle of what we can do, and that's sort of what I'm trying to say, is that the attention to detail is such that is the goal.
Yeah.
It's not it's not reliant on time or anything like that. But I'm just very lucky to be involved in this scene. To be honest with you, it's very cool. Very happy here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's that like you could think about like LA, you had the, like so, in the 70s, 80s, you had the Jerry Hay horn section. So, Jerry, Gary, Chuck Finley, now the modern iteration where Wayne is in, for Jerry.
Yep.
You get this group of people that work together and tend to work together fairly regularly, and have relationships with each other, and it shows in their playing. And just like there were the New York session players, like guys like Alan Rubin and Lou Soloff and Marvin Stamm, guys like that, Bernie Glow, and each of those sections had their own sound and their own feel, but you could tell that they knew each other, by the way they played together. And so you guys, it does come out that this is more than just a collaboration, like this big, okay, well, let's just find the best players and put them together. That there's actually some level of connection and communication beyond just the fact that you're great trumpet players.
Yeah, I think, interestingly enough, with that being said, it's like something that I feel there is definitely in London, which I'm not suggesting isn't anywhere else, but I believe is very strong here, is this idea of there being stepping stones on your path that are very close together. You're not having to leap from a youth band right to a film session. There's plenty of opportunity for experience all the way that allows you to gather the information required to continue. And everyone on their stepping stones, most people, they get to a certain point where they sit on that stepping stone, hopefully striving to the next, but they tend to finish sort of somewhere on their stepping stone, and they find their pocket, and they find their rhythm in the scene around there, right? And then there are other stepping stones, but there's plenty of almost like musical mobility that everyone sort of can make their living somewhere on this road of stepping stones. And I don't want to speak for other scenes necessarily, but I don't get the impression that is as accessible in some other places where you get some people. Part of this I think has something to do with unions, another conversation maybe, but like you're either sort of here or like you're here, and this gap here doesn't allow any space. And then I think the guys that are here, like over on the sort of top end spectrum area, they're going to be hesitant to let people jump this huge gap without having already done all of the work leading up to it. Whereas in London, you think of literally any music as a trumpet player, you can be involved if you pursue that particular road or stepping stones. There's always a next step that's close enough that you can always get to, and there's always someone on that step helping you to the next step. I really feel like that. And then you get to sort of where you want to be, or there's always something more to do, and that is really helpful for any young player. I believe there doesn't seem to be very many barriers in the way. If you're stuck at a barrier, it's either a problem with your playing or it's a problem with your personality or your attitude. They're really the only two things. There's no one's going to really, of course, every scene's got that person, right? But like, there are enough of these stepping stones of which everyone will be heard if they're good enough. Everyone. There's no barriers in that respect. I do believe that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool, and I think you're right. And I mean, sometimes it's also the perspective of the players. It's like people have this idea that if you're not you're not going to be a successful player unless you're playing top call studio gigs. If you're playing, you have to be a soundtrack player, you have to be a session player. If you're not doing that, then you're not successful. But there's lots of ways to have a successful career. And like you're saying, all those little stepping stones along the way, when you find your niche, when you find your groove, if you can lock into that, and because you may not be the best guy for a recording date, but you may be a really great guy for doing live shows.
Yep.
It's like, find the spot where you can be the best at what you have to offer, and and make money with it.
There are some really great trumpet players that are making a really good living. Everyone's got their USP, right? And for some people, it's like, I of course don't want to come across rude in any way to any individual player, but there are players that, you're right, they have their groove and they've got their thing, and for some of them, their USP, the unique selling point, might be that their availability for that particular thing that they are known to do is so good that they can be relied upon, not even just playing, but actually being there. That's always a problem for fixers and contractors. So they can make a really, really good career and a really, really good salary by being the person that fulfills that role in the industry, because everyone has to find their place. And you get these really scatty people that do a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and maybe they're less reliant than the guy who just goes, right, this is my bag. I'm going to be here, every day, or I'm going to be here for 90% of the time, and I'm going to be really good for the contractor, so they want to book me for the next one of these. So this is where I want to say the business side of it comes in, but no one really thinks about this. They just, as I say, they fall into their slot, they fall into their groove, they fall into their rhythm about where they belong, and there are many stages to which you can belong. I mean, just a side note to this, it's quite interesting. I was doing a clinic at Elmhurst College a few years ago in Illinois, and it was for. It's really interesting. I found it quite difficult, the clinic, because I got there. It was just last minute. I was doing clinics all over Illinois, and this one was last minute, and they had the whole jazz faculty there, and they said, uh, "Oh, we've got the whole jazz faculty here." And the first thing I said was, "Right, so how many of you are trumpet players?" And of the 50 people there, 2 people put their hands up, and I was like, "Okay, so where do we go with this? I've got to talk to them about, jazz or work, or for about half an hour I chatted, but I couldn't quite get anything to bite with them, and I think maybe I was almost at the end of it. I didn't know where I was going, and suddenly someone asked a question, and they watched one of the videos that I had done, with all the guys I've been talking about in my band. We got together, and they asked a question. They said, so how did you get all those great players to play for you? And I hadn't even comprehended that was even a thing. It wasn't that anyone can just call anyone to come and play on their thing, but what it made me realize was that maybe in London, or maybe just in this industry in these big cities, all the guys in my band, I pay them a little bit of money for my record, but for all those videos that we did, they all just did it because they wanted to. And I'll be eternally grateful for that. But we did that like little Let It Go video or whatever, and I just called up my favorite guys, to do it, and every single person said yes. And I've got to be aware that I can't forever be, asking for their help like that. But some of them will have doing it for one reason, or they wanted to actually just be part of the project. Some of them would be doing it because they wanted to help support me. Some of them were doing it because they were good friends. Some of them were doing it because they liked the music, or everyone has their reason for saying yes to this. But it really made me think when that question was asked, and suddenly I was off, like I could just talk about everything, and the rest of the clinic went really well. But that question really made me think, like, yeah, like there are a lot of players in the world, and they all live in different places. And I think I'd just taken it for granted that that I knew all these people in London at the age that I did, and they were all up for doing it, and to do it for free, and to enjoy doing it, and not to resent the situation. Like all these things clicked into place, and that's why the tracks sound good. I also don't let any of them get away with anything, as I'm sure you may well hear from them. I'm quite I'm in those sessions. I'm quite sort of, no, you'll do it again. It's not good enough, and all this, and they're all on board for the journey. They're all up for it. They all, well, hopefully they all enjoy it, and I'm very grateful for it. But it was an interesting question from like a little town or city in Illinois for guys, probably wanting to get into the Chicago scene or something like that. And it just made me think, like, oh yeah, very lucky, and you can just call on these people, and they want to do it, and they live 5 miles away, all in this like cluster of everyone living near each other and being up for it. So it's cool, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's when we were talking about, like, that scene, and the connection that you guys have, I think especially like you're talking about this workshop. Okay, you're teaching this seminar at a master class. You're at a university. Here you are in your 20s, and I'm sure that many of the faculty there are much older than you. And it's like, well,
and some of the students as well, which is difficult sometimes.
That too. But there's a level of maturity that when I listen to the stuff that you guys have done, both your band and just some of the session stuff that you guys have done and different projects that you guys have been involved in, there's a level of maturity of the playing and a sophistication to playing that is beyond just chops, and so my take on it is that you guys, you're students of jazz. So you're learning from the great masters, the current masters and the masters of the past. You're learning from that, you're developing that language and that skill, and then you're adding your own interpretations to that. So, in your path along this journey, to wherever you're going to end up, hopefully, with multiple Grammys and Academy, all those. Every award, you're going to have this wall behind you. Your house will actually be made of gold records. But as you're on this progress, when you can look back at your past and say, you know what, this is a pivotal moment. This was a moment that kind of got me going on the right track. Obviously, meeting Wayne was one of them, but what was like kind of the general one for you that's like, this is the moment where I really understood that jazz is important to me, that music is important to me, and this is going to be the passion that I'm going to carry forward?
That's a nice question. I sort of felt it's this isn't going to be a particularly straight answer again, but I sort of fell into so over here we have a few different music schools, private education. My mother raised us on her own, me and my two sisters, and she managed to get all of us. She's a music teacher. She managed to get all of us into Wells Cathedral School, which is a specialist music school, and with like high fees and everything. And we all got in on scholarships, and my mum could send us there, which was amazing because we didn't have very much money, and we went boarding, and she was so happy to be able to take us there. And I had just the most amazing musical education there, and then the other music school that I attended called the Purcell School, which is in Watford, where I live now, just outside London. And it's weird. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. Quite when I was younger, I used to like spend a lot of time, a bit geeky, just playing Flight Simulator 98, and I always wanted to be like an airline pilot. But I was quite good at the trumpet, and it just sort of it's not a very good answer, but it just sort of flowed. Like I had all this experience at school that I got, still youth experience, so it's not real, really. It's just opportunities to play and have really good tuition, to help you sort of get to another level. And then when I was 16, I started playing with the National Youth Jazz Orchestra, which was a really big deal because I met Tom, and I also met Callum Ow, who was my best man, and also writes all the music for me because he's a genius. And I started meeting people at those places, and then it was just sort of no way back. I mean, I started earning money playing, not a lot, but it was enough. I earned enough money playing at 16 that I didn't need to I never worked a job, which I kind of feel a bit ashamed about. I also feel a little bit sad that I've never done a job. I'm not ungrateful, but I'm also very aware that a lot of people have to do things that they don't want to do in order to make things work. I appreciate that I have always been able to do this, but there was no time to do a job, and I was earning enough money as a kid playing that any minimum wage job that I was going to fill up time with outside of my studies wasn't really going to make any sense. So I just never did it. Some people do paper rounds, some people do, they work in a shop, or I work at McDonald's or something like that, just to get some work experience, and I just didn't. So I guess I was really lucky like that. But that's what I mean. It just kind of fell into place. There was no time to think about being a pilot, and that whole dream of mine of being a pilot when I was younger was more of a sort of pre 10 years old thing. And I started playing the trumpet when I was 7 or 8. So it just kind of fell into place. And then after I played in the National Youth Jazz Orchestra, I started playing with the Sid Lawrence Orchestra. There was just no question at any point that I wouldn't do this. I I always used to get asked when I was at school, you know, you need to make sure you got yourself a backup plan. And maybe it's a little irresponsible saying this on a podcast, but just being honest, like I never I never considered a backup plan. Maybe that's not smart, but I didn't. I didn't believe that throwing myself at this 90% was going to be enough. Had to be at least 100. That's not to say that I didn't waste a lot of time as a teenager as well. I certainly did, like any teenager does. But and I still waste time. Half time I can't get my act together. But it's still it just why would I ever not want to go and play in a rehearsal band with a bunch of adults at 16 years old opposite my school on a Monday night? I didn't get paid anything for it, but why would I not do that? And that opportunity presented itself to me, not the other way around. So someone hears that there's a kid who plays at the Purcell School and they're missing a trumpet player. Oh, we'll see if he's around because he's only got to walk literally over the road and we can't get anybody else to come and do this rehearsal. So why not ask him? And then that turns into starting to go every week. And then that turns into, oh, one of the trumpet players on there had a gig, and he's, you know, ill or whatever. So why don't we give it to this young kid? And then, as I say, these stepping stones just start, and you can't get off them. I mean, there was never one pivotal moment that said, you are going to be a trumpet player. You know, if anything, I'm like, I'm not suggesting for a second I'm not going to play anymore, but like I'm looking at my life now. I've got a young baby. I'm married. I'm looking at all the other things, and I'm having to sort of like get off the stepping stone. COVID was good for this, actually. Get off the stepping stone and realize the other things in life that I actually really like and really love and want to get better at. Like I'm really into working with my hands, doing DIY. I built this studio on my own, basically, over COVID, and I realized that I am also something else other than just like a trumpet player. That sort of manifested itself in working in production, but even just outside of music, carpentry, things like that. I was so on this, you know, this conveyor belt almost. It was just something that got exponentially faster after I left school. I went to the academy, and then it was just this. You know, obviously this is the next thing you do after that, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then it just kept getting more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And I loved it, and I still love it, and I still love going to work, and I always will. But COVID was good to just sort of get off and just think a little bit about the other things in my life that I didn't realize I liked. And that's why there's no pivotal time for me. It was just a barrage of like forward momentum that, you know, I feel like half the time, you know, I could be doing a lot more to help progress my career as maybe in inverted commas a soloist or an artist or something. But I still consider myself very much to be a tradesman trumpet player. Like the thing I enjoy most is just being in the section with my mates. More than I like being up front on stage, you know, and being the clown at the front playing what ends up usually being high notes and jumping around conducting a band. It's great fun, but being a band leader is a very different prospect to being one of the guys in the section. And I just sometimes I've got to take myself away and put on one of those sorts of experiences and just go stand with my mates at the back, you know, with the other trumpet players. I just feel so much better there, you know. So that's why I don't release content as much as I probably should, because there's a reluctance to move away from. It's not a reluctance it's not a reluctance that I don't enjoy it or that I don't think that is the way my career will end up going, because it probably will. I think the earning potential ceiling is higher as well than just being a tradesman trumpet player. Not to be disrespectful to tradesman trumpet players, but I clearly do something that people on the internet like, and I should probably lean into that. I'm aware of that, but at the same time, as I say, I have a reluctance to do it because I just enjoy too much the going to work with my friends, basically. Because as soon as you're a band leader, you're not their friends anymore.
Very, very true. Actually, you know, I'm reading a book right now by a Brit, Greg McEwen, I believe is his name. It's called Essentialism. It's a
Okay.
really interesting book, and it's about it's mostly a business book, but it applies to all aspects of life about going, yeah, kind of getting things down to their most essential nature. So, like for careers, you don't have to say yes to everything, because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to it to everything else. And it's like being very super clear on what it is you're trying to accomplish, and only embracing those things. So, like, when you're talking about people who if you make yourself available for a specific type of gig, then you're always going to be available for that type of gig. But if you make yourself available for every gig, then you're going to start losing out on some things because you're spread so thin.
Yep.
So I think that, that kind of getting clear on, and this is the clarity that comes as we age. And not saying that you're young, but you're young.
So you don't feel like it anymore. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like you go through these stages in life. So, where you are right now is as entering your 30s, and where you're going to be 30 years from now, those are going to be different things, because you're going to have so many different experiences to draw from. But as we go through life, there are always going to be these points where you kind of go, oh, well, that was important to me when I was 25. It's not as important to me right now. And you start to grow as a person, and so I think that as that can, like, you just figured out for yourself that there are other things to life that you need to spend some time and energy on, besides just pounding out the double C's. So
Yeah,
uh,
I completely agree.
so yeah, I think that sometimes that's the hardest part for anybody, is to understand that what you do is not who you are. It's
Yes.
a part of who you are, but it's not who you are.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's funny you should say that, because I, yeah, this reluctance to go crazy and just make videos all day is, I think I want to be going towards that generally. It's also nice because I get to work from home, which, if there's anything good about COVID, anything, it's the ability for employers and people in the world to recognize that people can work from home.
Absolutely.
And with a young child, it's quite nice to be able to, work in bits and go down. Basically, I live at the end of the garden here working, and my wife and my baby live in the house, so I can go down the garden and make sure they're okay, and then go out for lunch with them. It's just it's a really nice. I don't even consider it solitary, really, because everything's on the internet now anyway. But it's a really I just really like this right now. I like this, but I should probably be aiming more towards that. But the other thing is, I am when you say, like, you're almost 30 now, and what will you be doing in 30 years time? Everything that I think about what I will be doing in 30 years time is more like where my life is rather than where the trumpet is, which is a little bit yeah. It's almost like my head. I'm thinking you can always get better at the trumpet. I guess it's this question as well, isn't it? It's do you want to fulfill your potential on something, to 102%, or do you want to be really, really good, or 80% of your potential on lots of things? There's something that Callum told me about where it takes you 80 it takes you, what is it, 20% of your time, 80% of your time to reach the first 20% of the time to reach the first 80% of your potential in any skill, and then 80% of the time to get the last 20%. Something like that, right? And it just, that last bit of whatever it is you're doing, it gets the how good you get at something just gets to get better at it. It just takes more and more and more time, and more focus, and more energy, and more concentration. And there's like a lot of things in the world.
Yeah.
And as I said to you before, when I was talking about how I ended up becoming a trumpet player, and there was one moment that told me I was going to do it, it's like that never came. So it's almost a case of now, like, reflection on the last 10 years, and recognizing all those moments, like tons of them, and realizing how they all sort of passed me by, and I didn't realize where I was. And then you look on like, I mean, you look on like, this is a conversation maybe about sort of popularity, or the world now is just basically about likes, or views. And I don't, my attitude towards that still remains the same. It's sort of going slightly off topic, but it kind of makes sense. It depends on what your goals are. I'm very much, as I said before, a product over process guy, and I I'm not. Or I imagine this will change over the next 30 years. Put it that way. Right now, I see a world of consumerism, and I think that it makes more, maybe a bit more business sense. And also, I like, I can't lie, I like the idea that people like the stuff I produce. A lot of the things that we're taught, particularly when I was at college, a lot of it was about your voice, your sound, your inner musician, your artist coming out, and you do everything for you. It's quite self-centered almost. Jazz generally is, and it a lot of it is about you expressing yourself, and then the audience either taking to that or not. And that's why we have some people are more popular than others musically and all that. Anyway, I kind of I saw this a slightly different way, like so there's this cool tune that like loads and loads of people like. No one's really done it this way. Maybe we can do it this way. And interestingly enough, the things that I found most moving about that whole process is actually when I've had messages off like loads of kids who like the music and actually want to get into playing because they've heard their favorite song done by trumpet or trombone or whatever. And right now, that feels more satisfying than me showing the world. Like, I don't, as I say, I keep saying time and time again, I consider myself more of a tradesman rather than something that I don't feel as I have skills to offer the world, but from like an artistic point of view, it doesn't feel like I'm sort of bringing my heart and soul out and showing it to everyone. It's more like, not, yeah, I guess, yeah, what is popular and how do I do it my way? And people like it. I mean, I didn't think they would. Like, I had no idea, but I think people like it. I mean, I'm no massive YouTube guy in the scheme of things, and I'm very, very grounded and aware of that. It's like a lot of people think that I have a lot of views. When you see the world and how many people tend to get, like, it's minute in comparison. But I think in the trumpet world, it's probably quite high, and that I think over the next 30 years, my opinion on that will change. I think I will become a little bit more like I'll probably be looking a little more inwards and rather than outwards. I could be wrong, but that's generally how I see things. Like younger people at the moment, anyway, they sort of think about how they can sort of get everything out to the world, and I see people releasing their own tracks onto YouTube with no marketing, and it gets no views, and it feels like they failed because it doesn't have the same view count as someone that's uploaded their version of Let It Go or something. And it's just unfortunate that is how the people in the world consume this music. And I almost feel like it's, as I say, one of the most moving things about this whole process has been, and the comeback players have gone, oh wow, I saw that video of yours, it's made me want to pick the trumpet up again. Yeah. It's completely different to what I do as a tradesman, where I'm playing just with my other colleagues, and we're playing with, and people don't really care about what we're doing because we're just doing it for function or something like that. It's a very different thing. And I could have said, I'm only going to do my music my way, this particular, but actually it's I probably wouldn't be having this conversation with you today had I not made that decision, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, like earlier I was mentioning like the Quincy Jones thing, and Actually, so the two books that I've just recently, been reading, the Quincy Jones and this Greg McKeown book,
Yeah.
they really tie in with this. That when you make that decision, and this is a path you're going to go on, that creates that more narrow gap, which allows you to focus your energy into it more. And one of the things that Q was talking about, you never know the amount of influence that you have on someone else, and especially as someone in the entertainment industry, as an artist or whatever, that you can touch the life. So if a comeback player or a young, like there's a young kid who's listening to it, and they go, wow, because you're playing a song they like, and then it inspires them to want to be a more focused on the trumpet playing, and then 5-10 years later they're an international star, and they've got thousands of students, and that person goes on to teach thousands of students. So that one
Yeah.
that you made creates this kind of global impact. But I think the other thing is like the essentialist kind of point of view is being clear on what it is you're trying to do, and understand that there's a trade-off to it, and just be good with that trade-off, saying, hey, look, if I'm going to be an artist, and I've heard this from so many different sources, that if you're going to be an artist, then be prepared to not make any money until after you're dead. So
But you're absolutely right. These things are not compatible. And try doing it and be British, right? And I know that there is a culture in Britain of self-deprecation and putting yourself at the bottom and showing that you hate everything you do. And that is very much a part of the tradesman side of things, right? The last thing that anyone wants to do in the business, in the playing industry side of things, is to ever come across as though you like anything you do yourself. Like you're consciously on guard as to make sure you're saying the right thing, so that you're not up, you're not coming across like, it's a fine line between confidence and ego, and we talked about that at the beginning, but they're not compatible. Because if you don't throw yourself at the artist thing and believe fundamentally and truly that you are someone that can touch the lives of how many hundreds of thousands of people that check your stuff out, it's very difficult, because it feels like you're living a lie. And that, I've never spoken about this on a podcast before, but that is definitely like something I'm very aware of. I have a bubble of friends. I have a bubble of I like how things are in my life, and I don't know what my risk appetite. This is a bit weird, but it's my risk appetite to changing that too much. So I've sort of put some videos out, and I love that, and I also love my day-to-day life that I do as a trumpet player, and I feel very torn. This essentialism thing, I'm going to have to read it, because it might be exactly the sort of material I need to read, because it just doesn't, none of it feels that compatible, being able to be both a self-deprecating trumpet working Brit who just likes to have a pint with their mates and plays and does gigs and does sessions and enjoys being part of the group and playing it, and then being the guy that tells everyone what they need to do, where and when, holds a sort of like personality, like internet personality, like just speaking to the camera after a video is like, that is a skill. Like, you try and sit, I mean, you're very, very good at it, you present shows, but just speaking to the camera and saying what you need to do, some of those videos take me hours to be eloquent enough to speak in a way that's engaging, to say the right things, the right length, not too long, not too short. It's a whole other skill. It's got nothing to do with playing the trumpet.
Yeah.
Whenever I go and do any of these solo gigs, I haven't even thought about playing, not even a bit. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say on stage. I'm thinking about how I'm going to make sure that everyone in my band is having the best time they can possibly be having, because I want them to come back and work for me again, because I know also what it's like to be the guy in the band.
Yeah.
So you're right. You're absolutely right. It's like this trade-off, this weird non-compatibility, and this sort of weird lie. It feels like I'm living a lie when I'm doing the other one, and I try and overlap them because I want to have the attitude that I have in the tradesman side of things, but they don't work. You have to. It's almost like you have to be a different person, and at some point, I think I'm gonna have to commit to one or the other. I'm just not quite ready to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, so like one of my favorite players of all time, Maynard Ferguson. You know, if you're a trumpet player, especially if you're a lead player, you gotta love Maynard. But you know, everybody I've talked to that played with Maynard, you know, people like Wayne, Roger, recently had Lynn Nicholson on the show, and Lynn and I had really great conversations, both on and off camera, about his time with Maynard. But I think Maynard was great in the fact that not only because he was a great player, but you know, coming up through the ranks, you know, playing you know, with Kenton Band and Charlie Barnett and all that sort of stuff, so doing the session work in LA, and then fronting his own band. Like it seemed to me that he never lost that character of being part of the ensemble. And you know, even though it was his show and he was a great showman, he still always wanted to bring the focus and attention back to his band, you know. And so it was taking those experiences of his past and letting that, as he eventually evolved into a front man, using those experiences from the back of the bandstand to drive how he conducted himself and conducted the business of the band. So, you know,
absolutely. I mean, I wish that there was space for another touring band, and I wish that I could get all the guys. I mean, the guys that are in my band are all very good earners, and I would love to be able to take them on tour and have them earn as much money as they would if they weren't on tour. Maybe it'll be possible one day for a short period, even, and people will be up for it. But using Maynard as an example is really interesting because some would say maybe we share similar skill sets in different eras. Maynard was the greatest of all time, in my opinion. But if you look at the way that Maynard's career developed, I mean, you know, with respect to Maynard, I think most of my fellow trumpet player, like really great trumpet player friends, would always look back to 50s and early 60s Maynard as being their favorite. That's not to say that nothing after that was great, because it absolutely was, but it's a really interesting topic because he was clearly moving his. I mean, I never worked for him. You've spoken to tons of people that did work for him. So this is more speculation than anything else, or observation of what it seemed to be. But he went down the more popular route, and it's sort of what I've suggested as well. And the later you go in his career, the further he is away from that tradesman, maybe not mentality, but from that tradesman lifestyle.
right.
And it's that bubble that I'm talking about my life as a musician, that I'm hesitant to risk changing. I know a few trumpet players who've gone on to become musical directors, who've come on to be composers, who've come on to be producers, and it never feels quite like it was before. And at some point that's a question that I need to answer in my own head, as to how best to accomplish all those goals. Yeah, it's a really fascinating thing. I imagine it happens in all areas of life as well, you know, not just in music. It's quite interesting. Yeah. We got deep there.
No, man, yeah. Well, I tell you what, I would be remiss if I didn't at least like quickly touch on the subject, because I know I will get tons of crap on YouTube if I don't at least say something about your high chops.
Okay.
So I'm not going to ask the typical question. Um, I guess it's kind of a multiple part question. So it's like, yeah, you are kind of, to me, one of the best examples of a highly efficient player. I mean, I look at you playing, I can't tell whether you're playing a middle C or a double C. So did that level of efficiency, was that something that you somewhat stumbled on, or is it something that you really had to craft an approach that gave you that level of command of the upper register?
Um, my old answer to this question would have been, anyone can do it. You just need to discover the correct way that suits you. And my new answer to the question is, I believe that anatomy has more to do with this than I feel comfortable with. and there are similarities between a lot of high note, like people that can play high notes. A lot of similarities in their anatomy that assists in their ability to be more efficient. That's not to suggest that you can't strive to be the most efficient trumpet player you can be, and that doesn't also mean that you cannot offer anything without being efficient. But there are many things on the trumpet I can't do, and they don't require you to be highly efficient. Sorry, yeah, they don't require you to be highly efficient. I just think it's that the thing that I've stumbled across as my unique selling point as a player, and one of the reasons that people like me as a player, is that I think my anatomy allows me to be a bit more efficient than the average. I I didn't used to think that, but the more I've got into it, the more I do. Did I stumble across it? I mean, I always wanted to sound like Wayne Bergeron, so there was a clear goal. Did I? How? I mean, I worked towards it, and I always had that sound concept. We're going to talk about that in a bit, I think. But I had that sound concept in my head, and over time it figured itself out over a series of light bulbs and discoveries. But I do think that having become having taught many more people than I had previous, and it wasn't my teaching necessarily that told me this as much as what affects my students' chops compared to what affects mine. Did I realize that that anatomy has a lot to do with it? When I play a double C and when anyone else in the world plays a double C, the same thing is happening. Our lips are vibrating at I can't remember how many times it is a second, but it's some silly high number, and that never changes. But how we conceptualize it and how we get to that, everyone has their own way of thinking about it. I don't believe that you truly master at least from my point of view, right? I don't think that you truly master playing the upper register if the only way you can play it is loudly. That is not to suggest that there aren't some of the best lead / high note players in the world that therefore are not masters. But my point of view, if I can't play the notes quietly, I'm not in control of what I'm doing. And I didn't learn that way. I think I could have learned even faster if I had thought about it like that. But it's a case that really what we're trying to do is put the air under a huge amount of pressure while also maintaining, good health in the body, because it's quite a lot of energy, and high air pressure with the correct environment here on the chops, and where, like, if if that's where I'm trying to get to. If the reason I would practice the high notes quietly is because if I can't create high air pressure and play the note quietly with no excess air in the sound, then it's not efficient. Simple as that. A lot of the reason people struggle with efficiency or any of this is because of this age-old conversation about airspeed, and how apparently increasing the airspeed makes the note go higher. It's not right. Actually, it is right, but it's not what we should be thinking about. If you increase the airspeed and then you reduce the whole, if you increase the airspeed by blowing harder, you are putting the air under more pressure if you don't change the rest of the environment, i.e. at the front of the mouth, right, just going into the mouthpiece. So you will create a higher air pressure, but it's not a particularly creative way of creating higher air pressure. It's just simply turning the engine on higher and then not making any other changes. I'm always looking for air to be the last of my concerns. If I'm having to turn the tap up to make me go higher, then I'm not doing something else right. If I have to turn the tap up to go louder, that's correct. If that makes sense. You turn the engine up to go louder, and you are more creative with where you create compression. And people have this word, they use this word compression all the time, and no one really knows what it means. It's the same with the word support. When the classical players used to tell me to support, and I used to just like, pretend that I was trying to show off my six pack or something, like, oh, like this, like that's support. Oh yes, so supported. And like I was holding everything back with my throat, and people got tense. Playing the trumpet, particularly in the upper register, is tense. Like there's no two ways about it. If I look like I'm not doing very much, there certainly is a lot going on, but if it looks easy, it tends to sound easy. That's the way I see it. And if it sounds easy, it tends to look easy. If it sounds hard, it tends to look hard. You see where I'm going with this. But that's my approach is one of control. I don't honestly don't really practice it like this. I don't really practice the upper register a huge amount anymore unless I need it for a solo gig. But I use these thoughts and things like this as a diagnostic tool to make sure that my muscle memory is still in like it's there. I've just been on vacation for 8 days to Cyprus, and I haven't played in 8 days, and I got back a couple of days ago, and I needed to start playing again, and it's the muscle memory is the first thing to disappear. All the thoughts in your mind don't go, but the muscle memory goes, and the only way you can really get that back is just by playing as much as you can. And I use these things of trying to play in the upper register very quietly as a diagnostic tool to make sure that everything's working. But it's a sad conversation, the anatomy one. I didn't used to think that, like, I think everyone can play a double C, but just how efficiently they can play it really is. When I look, someone like John Faddis is probably one of the most efficient trumpet players ever. We share similar. Our teeth aren't exactly the same, but I think that the function that our teeth are doing is kind of similar. And there are other trumpet players that I know that have got very different teeth structures, and they play the trumpet very differently. And they probably have better control in different areas of the horn. Like that's the other thing to just recognize that. I'm a student of, not of Doc Reinhardt obviously, but like of that mentality. I sort of believe that that's what's going on, and the embouchure type thing is just definitely a thing. It's just a thing. That's a whole other conversation. But
so what type are you?
I think
I'm a 4.
You're a 4. Okay, good.
I'm technically I'm a 2, But
Oh, you're a 2. Wow. Okay, that's kind of rare. But yeah, 4. Yeah, I know what you mean. Um, uh, I am a 4A slash 3B, and when I started with Reinhardt, I was definitely a 4A slash 3B, and then uh once I'd started taking lessons and learning to do everything properly about 18 months ago, I tried to be a 4A all the time. And actually, what I think's ended up happening is I've turned into possibly a 3B all the time with the intention of being upstream. So I don't know whether I'm upstream or downstream. I'm I have weird chops like that. There are some people that you just go 3A, 4, like so obvious, you know. Um, but that's where I think it can be really helpful. It's like, okay, well, you're going to have tendencies like this. I was just teaching a student now actually with the 3A, and he said, "Oh, why after I go to a double G, when I go higher than that, why does my sound get smaller?" It's like, well, most 3As after their best note tend to get smaller, just tend to. And then 3Bs is sort of the opposite. The higher you go, the louder you get, because but it's much harder for you to play high, generally.
yeah,
So because the air pressure is not it's not as easy to create a high air pressure. I've been working on this theory recently. Actually, I should probably just mention like about it's kind of it's sort of a Reinhardty thing, but it's my take on it, and it's a conversation about Reinhardt's legs of the inner embouchure. I think so much of what we do on the trumpet, it's a little different to trombone players and people with bigger mouthpieces, some classical players, and people with smaller lips. I think also people with big lips compared with people with small lips, this is different. But my whole thing when I play is like, how much of the lip can I get out of the cup? How I play relatively small diameter, and my lips are quite big, and I have to roll them under like this, and then I have to sort of pull them out of the cup before I start playing. And I was thinking about this, and I was looking at a lot of great like high note players, and all of them do the same thing. And then you look at a lot of really great classical players, and particularly the ones who play on bigger equipment, which is most of them, and also even more importantly, the ones that have like thinner lips. They can sort of walk the mouthpiece on, and then they have control on the inside of the cup, and that they can use their muscles on their face to determine the aperture size. I have no way of determining my aperture size after I've put the mouthpiece on. It just doesn't. I can't think like like using my muscles. Like my muscles have nothing really to do with air pressure. A lot of people, when they think, oh, to make more compression or more air pressure, which are they're the same things really, that they need to use the muscles in their face to fight the engine. The engine's playing, and then they need to bite down to make this fight really hard. And then what they do after that is that they open their jaw because they're told, oh, you've got to stay open though. So they open their jaw, then they push their muscles down to try and stop the air from coming out of their mouth because they think that that will make the note go higher. And then their body the air is under more pressure, but everything is out of sync and messed up. My approach is sort of different. It's like the lips, if you want to play loud, have to be open, pretty open. If you want to play high, they are a lot more closed, but still relatively open, but the jaw isn't. And the lips can be open, but the jaw doesn't necessarily need to be. And when the mouthpiece goes on and it squashes the lips into the teeth, whatever aperture size you've got there is sort of what you're dealt with until you take the mouthpiece off your face and put it back on. And in Reinhardt, it's supposed to be the same every single time you play, and I strive to do that. But the aperture size is so much more it's so much more sympathetic to what the air is putting over the lips than I think we have a huge amount of control over. It just doesn't feel like I ever think about the aperture size. When I'm playing, I don't think about it. It's just sympathetic to all of the other things in my muscle memory that are happening. So the reason I'm saying that is I think, I could be wrong, but I think I generate most of my compression or my air pressure from right at the front of my mouth between my bottom lip and my top teeth, like I'm saying the letter F. And that is the difference. I'm not saying the letter M, I'm saying the letter F. And the top lip comes down to meet the bottom lip. But the speed of the air is already fast because I'm using my lip into my teeth, not using my lip into my lip. So the back part of my bottom lip is going into my top teeth, and the top lip is meeting the bottom lip, and the vibration is happening just after that. And that's where I think my air pressure is coming from. Or I also, like when I'm playing high, like my tongue is like right forwards and high in my mouth. Like I do think that that's important. But I'm pretty sure that most of the compression is happening at the front, and that is so dependent on your anatomy because I can't close my teeth; they don't shut. So my molars, they close first, and then my top and bottom teeth don't connect. So technically I can play with my teeth closed. I don't play with my teeth closed, but technically I can, and that must have an impact on what's actually happening here compared to someone like a 3A who most of the time they have shorter top teeth and their lips align with the top of their bottom teeth as opposed to the top of their top teeth. If you see my lips in resting position, I don't know whether this is being filmed, but my lips don't. That everything has to be pulled down to align with the distance between my teeth, rather than it already being sat there. So 3As are very, very different players, and I feel like they almost need just different teachers. I don't think, if you've got a good idea of it all, you can teach 3As if you're 3B or a 4, but I think they're playing the trumpet in such a different way. And that's why, going right back to the beginning of this conversation, I'm very hesitant to give generic tips to trumpet players on the internet when I haven't seen them play anything, because so many things can mess you up.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who are not hip to the Reinhardt stuff, certainly there's a lot of resources. But being a 4, that Doc always said, and all of his students said, if you're a 4, do not play pedal tones. Pedal tones will mess you up. And I used to play a lot of pedal tones, and the pivot, since the track, I guess is the best way of saying it, the track of my playing being to ascend is down, and because of the way my jaw is structured, it's down diagonally. It's from up to diagonally across. I was trying to play the exact opposite. I had teachers who told me, no, you need to do this, and it was the exact opposite of what my body needed to do to create the level of compression and that balance of openness and compression. So I think that's why I love the Reinhardt method, is that it takes into account that there are these more predictable types of players, and that what works for one will be absolutely the worst thing for another. So you have to first determine what type you are so that you can give the best advice. So that's why, and it's so true with anything. It's like, yes, there are general rules, like blow into the small end of the horn, not the big end. So we can take that. But then everything else is somewhat a level of your anatomy and your experiences and things like that. And so you can, I always like to give things out with a caveat, saying, this may or may not work for you, but here's something
absolutely
to think about.
Absolutely. And I'm also hesitant to give any advice on this podcast is to making. Well, actually, that's not true. If anyone's interested in the best way of practicing the upper register, is just stop. This is my opinion, right? Stop climbing the ladder. Stop arpeggios from the low register to the high register. You know, I've never in my life had to go da 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 da. You know, every single time I play in the upper register, it's tongued. You know, or not every time, but the vast majority of the time, coming on a high F. You know, it's not. You don't get a run up to it, and the run up to it's probably messing up your ability to play the high F in the first place, in the most efficient way, that is. Because you know, I believe that a high C played fortissimo has the same aperture size as a middle C played pianissimo.
Right.
So you're having to change all these things about your aperture size from big to small as you go higher before you've even played the note. So you can't even get the right sensation on the high note without, you know, having to run up to it. So start tonguing in the upper register. It might not come straight away, but you'll find that it really helps your ability to play up there. And the other thing is, you're probably playing a mouthpiece that's too big for you, generally speaking. Like most people are, if they've never changed mouthpiece, like that can be one of the the quickest fixes. No, that's not true. It wouldn't be the quickest fix, but if you're someone that should be playing on high compression equipment, i.e. small diameter generally, like it can be the difference between you being able to play everything and nothing. And so many people just are so stubborn about that, and they'll just play on their 3C or their 1.5C that they got when they were a kid, and then they think they can do everything. It's like, no, the anatomy is not going to allow you to do. Your anatomy won't allow you to do that. It's just not. The trumpet's just a big compromise. You know, it's you got if you want to get better at one thing, something else is going to suffer. It's not to suggest you can't keep a level like a standard all the way over your playing, but you know your flexibility suffers after you've had a couple of periods of playing in the upper register because your muscles have now your muscles and your muscle memory and your sensations are too how do I put it too in line with that sound and that feeling, and you you have to reset, you know, and go again. It's a really hard instrument.
Yeah.
Really hard.
And that's why we spend a lot of time at the pub. So,
Yeah, too right.
all right, Louis. I mean, man, we could talk about this stuff forever, but I do need to get through these segments real quick, and
Yeah.
so I can let you off this call. This is the first segment is brought to us by our good friend Michael Barkley of Barkley Microphones, and this is called Sound Off, and it's about your approach to sound. And I think more than you know, just the standard thing is like when you're suggesting to someone, when you're working with one of your students on how to develop a better sound concept, and particularly if we're thinking about sound in the upper register, what are some of the things that you suggest thinking about to improve the quality of your sound?
That's a good question. I'm hesitant to suggest that bigger is better. I think a sound that is adaptable is a better sound. So often do we have to not sound like ourselves at work? We are not asked to be Louis Dowdeswell today. We're asked to be sample X, or can you sound like Miles Davis on this? Can you sound like Clark Terry on this? And sound concept is it's a constantly changing thing. Again, sound is very anatomy based. So much of it is what you know, the mouth cavity, the vibrations happening in your head. Actually, so much less of it is the mouthpiece and the trumpet as much as it is that. Because most people sound pretty much the same on all gear. It's just only if you A/B them next to each other that you'll notice a difference in sound, which is why I'm also sort of not too concerned about listening for sound too much on instruments. The sound guy's got more control over your sound than you do. It's why adaptability of sound is so important. If you have bad sound quality in the first place, I don't even really know what that means, because there are plenty of particularly jazz great legends that by um, by classical standards, or by standards set by uh, traditional trumpet thinking, have in they have, in inverted commas, bad sounds. They have air in their sounds. They've got they have like croakiness sometimes. That doesn't make them have a bad sound, in my opinion. You've got to, in 2022, you must be adaptable. I hate the word versatility. It's a word I grew up with. My classical teachers telling me I needed to be versatile, and it, you know, it's it's about being adaptable to the scenario you're in. So listen to lots of people, check out, like, try and copy them, and your sound will be what it will be. There's not a huge amount of control you have over it. I'm convinced of that. You can change it by changing your equipment. You can change it by striving to be a different player than you currently are, but you have way less control over these things than you think you do. We hear so many things and we want to sound a particular way, yet we always sound. It's like our voice. I have really no control over my voice. I really don't. My wife is an opera singer, and I bet she didn't sing like that when she was younger. So she's trained her voice, and she can always think to look to improve resonance and things like that. And I agree that's completely still the case on the trumpet. You can improve your resonance. You can think about that, but the reality is that what you end up with is unfortunately what you got. But more importantly than that, if you can make yourself not sound like you, that's almost a better skill than being only able to sound like you. We must be able to hear another sound, copy it, reproduce it, understand the differences and the nuances in it. I mean, without going too much on a tangent, Till Brunner's got the most beautiful trumpet sound I think I've ever heard. And he can play in in a lot of different ways. It always sounds like Till, but he can turn that air switch on, and it just sounds unbelievably beautiful. And then he can turn the air switch off. So he's got a very adaptable sound, all within his own sphere of sound.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is that you can also listen to other players and and come up with how you think they all sound and try and be them. It's a funny thing. I hope that's helpful.
That's good for me. Our next segment is called Geared Up, and Geared Up is about gear, of course, and is brought to us by Venture Mouthpieces. Venture, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code Trumpet Gurus 21 to get 10% off your order. So this, the gear question, but again, like, I don't like to do the standard thing, but your approach to gear, why it's more about why do you play what you play, and how do you view the relationship between the gear and the player?
Okay. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Yamaha. I'll get that out of the way. They've been amazing. And I'm a Yamaha artiste, and they look after me very, very well. And I would encourage anyone to go out and try any instrument, but I do believe that Yamaha have the best quality trumpets, in my opinion. Um, However, your question was about why I play these trumpets and the GR mouthpiece that I have. The GR mouthpiece that I have is like a custom fit suit that I had that GR made for me in Wisconsin. So I'm very, very lucky to have that. Um, and the trumpet I have, So I have a very close relationship to my mouthpiece that I'm playing at any given time. Before this mouthpiece, which I got in January 2019, 2019, yeah, I think so, yeah. And before that, I played Wayne Bergeron GR mouthpiece for 7 years. Before that, I was on my journey figuring that out. But by the time I was 18, I was settled, pretty much on the Bergeron, and mine's really just a slightly more conventional version of Wayne's. I am more closely have a closer relationship to my mouthpiece than I do my trumpet. Honestly, my trumpet can change um, daily. I'm not uh, sometimes when I'm in my studio here and I'm recording some stuff, uh, I get wound up with the trumpet that I'm on. I just got all my trumpets out behind the computer in cases, and I'll just go get them all out and just see which one feels best today. I'm not like most important thing for me on the trumpet is that it plays in tune generally and it has a double high A. Some trumpets don't. I know that sounds a bit silly, really. Most Yamahas do, and they play in tune, and they all sound good. I mean, they all sound great. The only time that I would ever notice that I preferred one over another is if I played them next to each other. I know it's a bit sounding a bit blasé about it, but I'm more interested in how it feels to play and how comfortable it is to play than the sound it makes. You know, I would not. My opinion is I would not sacrifice um, my enjoyment of playing a particular trumpet. Uh, if my enjoyment of playing a particular trumpet was 50% better than another one, and that other one had a 3% sound improvement, because I honestly believe that the improvement between different trumpets is like within 5%. So much more of it is you and everything else. I'm going to go with the one that is 50% more enjoyable and better to play than the one that gives me 3% better sound. It's kind of it's sort of it's pretty matter of fact, but that's how I feel about it.
But that's great. That's great, you know, and having that consistency up front with the mouthpiece, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't really ever blame the trumpets for not working, but I also recognize that they've all got their problems. Like if playing the trumpet is just a big fat compromise, then all trumpets are also just a big fat compromise. You know, some do some things better, do some other things better. Thank goodness there are so many of them for us to choose from. So
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah.
Or a blessing or a curse. I'm not sure which one. All right. Well, we got one final segment to get through, Louis, and this is brought to us by good friends of Robinson's Remedies, rapid relief for your sore and tired chops. This is the Robinson's Remedies rapid fire round. This is a series of questions that go all over the place.
Okay.
Some about life, some about trumpet, some about beverage. So
I'll try and be short and snappy.
all right, let's see what we can do with this. All right, so there we go. First question for you, Louis. Who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
My wife.
All right. What's your favorite book?
I don't read much. The one I enjoyed most, probably The Strange Death of Europe by Douglas Murray.
Okay. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Oh goodness. The worst movie I've ever seen. Oh, I I it's got to be some rom-com that I didn't want to watch that I was made to watch
Well,
by
look,
by the most influential person in my life. Sorry.
yes, we'll accept that as your answer.
Yeah. Uh, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say if you got a definite answer, I'll take it. But if
I
not,
literally can't think of the worst movie I've ever seen. No, it's not there. Sorry.
that is a rom com. You know that. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
I said pilot before. Um, yeah, pilot.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Um, beer.
All right. You could have a dinner party. And at this dinner party, you could invite any three living people, any three people in the world that are alive today. Who would you want to have there?
Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, um, and Douglas Murray.
Okay. You got three additional chairs at this table, and you could invite magically any three people from history to join along with you.
uh, because I've got those three there, I'd have to have probably there are so many people that aren't here anymore. Einstein, uh maybe like JFK, um and Neil Armstrong.
Okay. Good.
That's a weird dinner party.
All right. Lacquer, plated, or raw?
Plated.
All right. What's your favorite quote?
Oh. Oof. Um. Let me. I might have to find this. I don't know it off by heart. Yeah. Um. Don't compare yourself with other people. Compare yourself with who you were yesterday.
That's a good one. I thought it was going to be another round, please.
Very good.
Yeah. What's your greatest fear?
Um. I fear. Oh, that's a really good question. I love swimming, but probably drowning.
All right. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
Um. Uh. Flight.
Yeah, see, be a pilot.
Yeah.
What aspect of trumpet playing do you find to be the most over, or yes, what aspect of trumpet playing do you find to be the most overrated?
Air.
Okay. And what aspect do you find to be the most underrated?
What happens between the lips and the mouthpiece? Sorry,
All
what
right.
happens between the teeth and the mouthpiece? Not the lips.
You can go back in time and give your younger self, not too long ago, you can go back and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Um. Um. Be open-minded. That you uh, don't be stubborn because you might surprise yourself about what you might like musically later on in life.
Okay. And while you're back there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
Um, just yeah, I think honesty is really important and loyalty. So just make sure you don't lose that value. Just stay honest.
All right. And final question for you, Louis. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, I want my legacy to be that that my family all had nice, happy, meaningful lives, and that I was capable of facilitating that for them
That's
more
good.
than anything else. Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the trumpet.
No, it doesn't. No, honestly, like I wish it did, but
I mean, kind of
it
does, but
might be because I have a new baby, but I feel very much in that my head is very much in that space right now.
yeah, absolutely. I understand that completely. All right. Well, Louis, it's been great getting to know you, man. This has been a fantastic hang, and everything that people have told me about you is absolutely true. You're a warm and genuinely funny guy. I like talking.
Thank you very much. I really very much enjoyed it. It's been
Yeah.
lovely.
And thank you for taking time to join us on this episode of The Hang. Make sure that you like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and links to all of Louis' very cool stuff are going to be in the show notes. So make sure that you check out his YouTube channel. His playing is it speaks volumes for itself, and so check Louis out. Good dude. So
thanks
very much. And as always, folks, peace and slide grease. We out. Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Guru's Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signal, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Guru's Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.